On today's World Insight, the power of diplomacy amid great adversity with two European diplomats. First, the French ambassador to China talks about the challenges and perks of serving his post, and China's long history and growing ties with Switzerland, in the words of the Swiss ambassador. Here is our host, Tian.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian. 2020 is a special year, at least for most of us, who have never experienced a global pandemic. It exacerbated almost all the other endemic problems that the world has facing. Deficit of trust, equality, and wealth. At a time when multilateralism is needed the most, there's a clear deficit of that too. Experienced and responsible diplomats whose jobs are not only safeguarding the national interests of their own countries, but also to find common ground with others are in urgent need. Recently, I talked to two of them. They're both working here in Beijing. They're both from Europe. Their distinctive countries are, just like everybody else, struggling with the challenges of the pandemic, economic recovery, and geopolitics. Their work in China is about building a bridge between their home countries and China. When things are rapidly changing every day on all fronts, how are they holding up to their duties and responsibilities? First up, French ambassador to China, Laurent Bili. After working in Brazil and Turkey, he's now in China. Like any experienced diplomat, he's getting more interested in the culture he is working with. Listening to him talking about contemporary Chinese artists in the embassy room, one could sense this cultural immersion.
Quite proud of this one, the Wuchi, and because it's also remind me my youth center when I was with Jacques Chirac. He was always part of the state visit. And he was such a personality. You had something when you were discussing or seeing him, something so gentle, so a real natural charisma.
Yeah.
Despite being a person maybe discreet, not outspoken, but you could feel his energy and his talent.
You were talking to him earlier?
I was talking to him, but as a junior diplomat with a lot of caution, and but he was always kind to everybody in his visit. And Yan Peming is also a charming person, living between France and China. And I really love that painting, and I've got difficulty to imagine that room without that painting.
Did you tell Yan Peming that I'm always looking at you into your eyes?
No, but since we have his daughter as an intern,
yes.
I think I'm working on it to make my declaration when the times come. Well, there is obviously differences in our society, in our systems, but we have to also think about a positive agenda, and positive agenda can be what we do together in a foreign stage, like climate change or development policy, but it's also about cultural exchanges, exchange of students. I hope in that regard that all the difficulty that we have at present time for circulation, mobility of people will be soon resolved. But in our side, we are working a lot to maintain a high level of presence in that sector. I mentioned already Impression Soleil Levant, but we had also more than 100 events during the month of environment, China-France month on the environment. We had Mr. La Cascade, which have been accepting to do a quarantine in order to be able to present 8 theater sessions. We had also the Panorama or Film Festival, which we have been able to organize this year, even if it's of course without the presence of some actors or actresses from the French side. So we really think that these kind of events are very important. And for next year, we are still working on the year of tourism between France and China. I don't know exactly which form it will take because there is a certain degree of uncertainty, but there is a room for doing more in that field.
When you say one has to be creative, flexible, and with a lot of agility these days in order to make things happen, Can you help us to understand how you are doing it on your daily life or on your daily work?
Oh, on my daily
a
work.
Big sigh. Did I
on
hear?
my daily work, we had a year which was very different. At the beginning of the year, I was working on the visit of my ministers, 2 in January. By the end of January, I was evacuating French citizens and European citizens from Wuhan. Later on, I was organizing the embassy to be able to continue to work under uncertain circumstances. Then we transform ourselves in a place to buy masks and other medical equipment. Then we focus on the resuming of activity of a French firm in China, then on the possibility for teachers to come back in order to ensure that French community, French business will be comfortable to work in China. And then after we were back on some kind of normal, but at the same time while doing all these main focus of activities, trying to maintain political dialogue, phone calls between our leaders, exhibition. I think one of the nice exhibitions that we had in Shanghai, the one of Monet, Impression Soleil Levant. So it has been a demanding year, but also exciting because it's for the good cause of our friendship.
But I guess it's such a test for any diplomat, particularly diplomats coming from a country like yours, which has enormous amount of communication and interaction with China.
It was, but again, it's for the good cause, and we enjoy a good degree of dialogue, even if sometimes it was a bit tougher, like on flight connectivity, things like that. But at the end, I think things are progressively back as normal as they can, according to circumstances.
I just wonder, to you, long-time diplomat, what is the quality that you would cherish also right now?
Well, first of all, thanks for the comments. One of the depressing...
behind your back, I would say the same.
One of the depressing aspects of the work of a diplomat is that endless work, because you always feel that you could do more, and I wish I had a longer day, longer week, longer month to be able to work more for our cooperation. But so I think what I really like in China is that there is so many talents, so many people. We are very motivated to work, to open new avenues. And I feel sometimes that I should do more, that I should be able to even be more present. But to be a good diplomat, I think that curiosity and that will to do things is the main thing. And China is a wonderful country because there is so many people that you want to work with.
So, Mr. Ambassador, how to be an expert while at the same time involved yet still keep a distance when providing policy suggestions? That's a very interesting combination of feelings to me. How are you seeing these kinds of combinations?
It's certainly a challenge. I don't pretend to be a specialist about China. I'm also the head of a team which is combining a lot of talents coming from different sectors. I think as the French embassy in China, I've got the privilege to be able to have the best also of our system, candidating for China and being present and supporting me. For me to be a specialist, somehow it's sometimes just to have more questions than the others. And we have always to be modest, and I think it's the best way to do our work is to keep that degree of modesty about what we know and what we can achieve.
They say if you're in China for 1 week, one could well write a book. Well, for 1 month, people have to ponder and think, what shall I write home about? But for 1 year, things are getting a little bit more complicated, and therefore it's hard to put down words to describe exactly what's going on as if they could be described. Mr. Ambassador, you're already here for more than 1 year. I wonder, how would you write home about this country that you've been working so hard in over the past 1 year?
Well, so that year was a bit peculiar, and for a few months I've been knowing Shaoyang quite well, and the rest of China less, I will say, because it was so impossible to travel.
Yeah.
But I think it's people back in Europe, in France, don't always imagine the rhythm and the rapidity of a change in China. The other day I was in Hangzhou, and I've seen a small, nice place where it was a bio shop, having product from direct from the farm in Yunnan. And I think when you think about that, people will say, well, that happened in Paris, where you have these kind of things. But they don't think yet that Hangzhou people are having exactly the same kind of demand of quality and
desire about their life.
And we are becoming closer. China's growth, China's change of way of life is impressing. And there is a lot of things that we can do also together in that regard, because France is also a lot about art de vivre, about a way of having quality products. And that's another challenge for me, to bring wine, cheese, a lot of good food, good meat to the Chinese market, because I think we are arriving at a moment where we are, of course, from two different continents, but our desires are not that different.
French ambassador to China. China and France, along with 27-nation European Union, have made headway in banding together against COVID-19, climate change, cutthroat global trade, and other common challenges. But how does the whole year 2020 stand out in the minds of the French envoy? What has he learned so far serving his post in China? Let's listen.
From the very beginning, we tried to maintain a kind of normality in our cooperation and to be present in different fronts. Of course, it's much easier since, let's say, April. And since September, I start again to travel to meet as much people as I can, to be in contact with local initiative and to boost our bilateral cooperation.
As you said, April to May, there are already a lot of interactions between the two sides, China and France. And the Paris Peace Forum is one of those that attracts a lot of people's eyes. I know in the forum you talk a lot about unity, and France emphasized much on this topic. Tell me more about what kind of unity do you think, Mr. Ambassador, is urgently needed in this circumstance?
Well, the Forum of Paris in 11th or 13th of November was a great achievement, because despite also the pandemic, we managed to organize it, to have more than 50 heads of state participating, including President Xi, which was one of the first to speak in the conference, but also 12,000 actors, a lot of work session. And the main theme of the summit was really to think about the day after, how to rebuild the economy, how to make us work together in the field of health. One of the interesting achievements was the mobilization about COVAX and Act A for the vaccination, to provide vaccination to all the world in an equal way. But there were also other forums, like the Development Bank Forum, shared about a common future on financing of the ODA, which was also a very important one. We had one on Paris School on cyber security. So a lot of aspects to make our world better and to work together.
How pragmatic is it? I mean, when you think about the circumstances we're still facing today, even though vaccines roll out for emergency use, but it seems to be still quite some way before we can really get there.
Of course, there is very some way, but some time to get there. But already to work together on like financing common for ODA, that's very important, because we are seeing for almost the next 10, 20 years about how to help people in need and have new ways of doing it. And the interest of the Paris Peace Forum is also that it's not only states, but it's also private sector, NGO. There is an agenda for solutions. More than 100 projects were presented, funded. And so I think it's a very pragmatic and constructive way to work together.
And this has been the platform of China-France cooperation, and of course also France reaching out to the rest of the world.
Yes, from the very beginning, China has been present in the forum, and its contribution is much appreciated. And of course, the topics are also evolving, because we this year, obviously, we couldn't avoid to be focusing on the pandemic and the way to overcome it. But I think as a forum and a way of organizing the world, a way of exchanging, of taking new commitments, but commitments coming from different sectors of the society, that's a really innovative way of working. And in this time of also confrontation, to have so many actors discussing very freely, it really makes a difference.
When it comes to unity, of course it creates opportunity for cooperation. What kinds of pragmatic cooperation do you think there exists for the opportunities between China and France?
Between China and France, and I will say between China and the European Union, because somehow there is a common ground between two. I think climate change, biodiversity is certainly one of the most promising sector of cooperation. Last year, when President Macron was in Paris, we have the Beijing call for climate and biodiversity. It was a very important document. We are implementing it. We see new commitments from China. President Xi's speech in the UN General Assembly is a declaration for the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. And so we see that there is a dynamic, and on the ground also we exchange a lot. Our Agence Française de Développement, or Development Bank, is financing very concrete projects with World Bank or IIB. So there is a lot of things going on, and I think there is even more that can be done with a view to work together for Kunming COP15, for Glasgow COP26, and so I think it's one of really the top priority. We also think that we can do more regarding Africa and the alleviation of debt in Africa. All countries are being targeted. Europe is heavily targeted, France is heavily targeted, China is getting better. But for the less developing country, especially in Africa, the pandemic is really a very, very hard challenge. And we really have to help these countries to overcome the challenges. And so we need to make a common effort on debt alleviation.
But, you know, people have to prioritize. So at this moment, how do you think you can work on so many different fronts all at the same time under difficult circumstances?
I don't think it's that difficult because we have such a tradition of cooperation together. We have a strategic dialogue already going on, I think, for 20 years. We have diplomatic relations going on for nearly 60 years. And so we have mechanisms to exchange notes on many subjects. Of course, it's more difficult these days because we have to do it in video conference and not in direct contact. But there is a certain degree of trust between actors because they know each other from previous years of cooperation. So it's not that difficult to have many subjects on the table.
China has been committed to carbon neutral by the year 2060. So it seems that there's already quite some commitment there. Of course, China is now working on the specific plans to reach there. How is China and France going to be able to look at the long term and the short term?
There is a lot that we can do in terms of research and new technology. And regarding especially the French firm in China, a lot of them are mobilized on smart cities, on clean energy. And that's certainly one of the sectors where we want to push cooperation. We had two projects of clean city, green city, one in Chengdu and one in Wuhan. And that's clearly the kind of project that we are going to push in the future. And as a way to bridge also relation between firms of both sides and to work together and bring new solutions.
So, sir, how do you see the current stage of rollout of emergency use of vaccination? And how is France and China looking at the future cooperation in pandemic prevention and control?
As you said, France is certainly one of the main actors on that front. We really committed heavily financially with more than 510 million for ACT-A and 100 million euros for COVAX. China has been declaring its participation to the initiative. We hope that it will join us also for the multilateral part of the financing. But having said that, we are organizing or plan for vaccination in our own countries, starting by elderly people and medical people, and it will start in vulnerable groups. It will start in January. Spring, we will enlarge it to new sectors. And the other issue is clearly to provide vaccinations to other parts of the world where there is challenges. And that's really a part where I think our countries can work together.
What do you think could be some of the most important tasks right now in order to reach there, as you just mentioned, from France's perspective?
I think the question of financing is a key, because according to the WHO, there is still quite a gap, despite the last announcements in the Paris Forum. And so new financing, new collective financing for the most vulnerable is certainly key.
Talking about both climate change and the pandemic prevention and control, all of these subjects need urgently international cooperation. But we have seen quite some challenging years earlier as a result of lack of cooperation and collaboration. Mr. Ambassador, how do you think things might evolve from now on? After all, we have learned our lessons.
First of all, I think despite some political speeches of skepticism about climate change in some countries, most of the actors, being economic or cities, even provinces in some countries or states in some countries, have been quite active. And I think there is a kind of good sense in public opinion that there is a link between disorder of the world, being pandemia, being excessive natural events, and climate change. And there is much more mobilization today. I think the link is more obvious today than maybe it was yesterday, that even it was at the time of the Paris Agreement. And of course, the change of the US administration is probably going to bring more consensus in the world regarding the need to act together.
And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian. Coming up in the program, China's long history and growing ties with Switzerland, in the words of the Swiss ambassador to China.
The world is changing fast, taking all our lives with it. But we can change it too, by seeking answers to problems through discussions and debates. On World Insight, I ask direct questions to real people in the know, seek genuine answers, but respect diverse perspectives. Our live global debates tackle the most critical issues head-on. World Insight with Tian Wei, go beyond the headlines.
This is World Insight, and I'm Tian Wei. China's longest diplomatic relations with Western Europe lie with Switzerland. It's a budding relationship from the time of a young People's Republic to the first Chinese joint venture with a Swiss company at the start of China's reform and opening up. Today, strong relations are anchored on innovation and vibrant trade. No wonder the Swiss ambassador to China is upbeat about growing ties despite global threats such as the pandemic. Mr. Ambassador, good
welcome,
to see
Tian Wei.
you.
Such a great pleasure to welcome you at the Swiss
Thank you,
President.
thank you. Thank you, sir. We started, though, with the reality checks about the pandemic.
I think the year 2021 is not a big prophecy. It's going to be the year of the vaccine. And in this case, I think both countries are well off, because we are either producing vaccines or having agreements with other producers. I am quite confident about that. The main point is access, to provide access to vaccine, because not everybody has the same access, and the multilateral response is going to play an important role. The initiative so-called COVAX under WHO to provide an easy access to all the countries who need the vaccine is a very important one. I think that's going to be one important moment of cooperation in the multilateral framework. Both our countries are participating in that, and that's going to be an important moment in 2000. Not only the moment, because it's going to occupy one part of the year 2021.
It's encouraging to hear that. On the other hand, Switzerland is a country that's very open on the border. You have different populations coming in every day to work in your country. And that's important for a very integrated Europe. So how do you see, Mr. Ambassador, both the positive side and also the challenges as a result, particularly during this time when the pandemic hit in the European continent?
I mean, you correctly express how things are. So Europe is relatively small in surface, and these populations are really intertwined. It's not a choice to say open, close. In normal times, there is 1 million people. Our population is 8.5, 1 million additionally get in and out from. This is the reality. These people are not just tourists who can choose to come or not to come. They're coming for working. In my region, in the medical sector, 80% of the population go across the border every day. So you cannot imagine to a certain point to have a lockdown where to close the borders. That's the reality of Europe for different reasons, also for the sides. So we are very much circulating quite intensively. And our, not only economy, but services, as this example shows very well, need this exchange. So we have to adapt the measures we take. At the moment in Switzerland, we are still fighting with the pandemics. Some strict measures are implemented. Now, especially that is Christmas time, so people should or would gather. I think for this year is going to be more difficult. But a total block or stop is not imaginable for the reason I described. I am confident that with the vaccine campaign in a few days or weeks, things or the dynamics are going to change.
Yeah. Yes. We hope that will happen as soon as possible, yes. Mr. Ambassador. But, Mr. Ambassador, that prevents further real communication.
Yes.
Face-to-face is always the best option. And when I see you in your eyes, I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
But we might not have that luxury for some time, unfortunately. So how do you see it? And yet, this is a critical time because a lot of things are changing. We urgently need to know what each other are thinking. And this gives your even heavier workload because you are the bridge bringing the two sides together. How are you doing it on a daily basis? And how do you look at the possible misunderstandings one could have about the other? And what is your solution?
You presented that very well, and there is not one unique answer to that. As a diplomat, I've been dealing mostly in bilateral, but in multilateral, in plenary sessions, nothing happens. It happens in the corridors. It happens in the cafeteria.
At the coffee shops.
At the coffee shops, And this, there is no virtual coffee shop. There is just the real one. So there is a danger for possible misunderstanding or even to slow down, definitely slowing down actual progress in negotiations. Yes, you also mentioned positive news to me, so even more important, those who are in place to,
you look at it as,
to deal, as people cannot come from headquarters, we have to deal, willing or not, what we can do. There is maybe the diplomacy looks a bit more like it used to look like 30, 40, 50 years ago when there was just a telephone and nothing else to have a communication from the capital to capital or government to government. Now with I don't say that we were threatened the spices because of all this multiplication, but our task, also the instrument we had at disposal, had a big evolution lately. Now we are coming back maybe much more about those who are in the capital actually are the only eyes and hands of a government like it used to be 50 years ago, maybe.
Ambassador Regazzoni from Switzerland has been in China for a year and a half by the end of 2020. As an experienced diplomat, he knows that the adept diplomacy always takes leadership and person-to-person trust, as he showed me through the history of his diplomatic career with photos. Now, it's also about Mongolia and North Korea,
yes.
PRK.
Yeah, that's Mongolia, and North Korea.
Yes.
Right.
When you present the credentials.
Yeah. This is always an important moment in one's career, and one never gets used to that. Never.
No. It's
no.
an important moment. And also in France, right?
France,
that was a very special time.
We spoke about the Paris Agreement, and François Hollande at that time was French president, so it is very much in the scope of what we discussed now. That's successor, Emmanuel Macron, his wife, and my wife there in the Jardin de l'Élysée.
That's a very nice
I like this picture. It's a very warm one, and actually it corresponds to the personalities also, very warm ones. And there are other stations of my diplomatic career. So
in Europe, in Africa, in Asia.
Asia, Europe, Africa, right. But you know, at the end, what remains always in all this posting, also those who are not pictured here, is people. The people you met. That's the most important thing, and that remains for decades, even in smaller experiences, smaller encountering, that remains.
And these are from Asia, huh?
This is Indonesia, my second ambassadorial assignment. From Indonesia, that's Switzerland, of course.
Yes.
And here is Sri Lanka, which has been my first ambassadorial postings. So with our elephants in the religious occasions, they are decorated this way. The objects are really beautiful ones. It has been prevented. It was a collection of a Swiss gentleman established in Sri Lanka for a long time. And at the moment we left us this big gift, and we are very honored peoples once again. That's a musical instrument from Timor-Leste. The name is sasando, and I think it's traditional instrument there. So that's like you open this way, and the musician plays it with the hands on the strings this way. This is the keys to tune it, tune every key. Now it's out of tune. To know that you can hear a bit of, you know, how the sound might be. Very sweet.
Gentle and sweet sound.
It sounds something like, you know, we are used to that in Latin America maybe, but it's same sound, very sweet. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
As experienced as Ambassador Regazzoni is as a diplomat, the year 2020 has been extremely challenging as well. It's designated to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Switzerland. By the way, Switzerland was among the earliest Western nations to establish a formal relations with the People's Republic of China. There were enormous amounts of events and activities planned to honor this occasion. This is what happened due to the pandemic.
Indeed, it has been a very special year, let's say a difficult one for all of us. We were imagining that in an entirely different way, because it is the year of the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our two countries. So we had prepared festivities, important bilateral visits. We could carry one of them, and not the least important, because the Speaker of the Swiss Parliament was here early this year. It seems so long back. It is not. But then the pandemics changed our programs dramatically. So looking back at this year, it has been the first part. It has been very much under the pandemics. To us, at the first time, it was the usual, you know, bringing in colleagues stuck abroad. And one very important and unexpected activity has been procurement of medical equipment, masks. Massive procurement from Switzerland occupied us between April and June massively in our day-by-day activities at the embassy. Before that, there has been also some moments of a very important solidarity, as in the early stage we brought in ventilators for the city of Wuhan. I think this is also an important moment. And looking ahead, we are now busy with, I think, with the vaccines. This is going to be, to us, the Swiss government announced that in a few days campaign will start. And by mid of 2021, the objective is to have 7 million vaccines, so let's say 75% of the Swiss population. We hope that by then also to have a more frequent exchange also in people.
It certainly has been a very challenging year, but many are appreciating, you know, the PPEs that the Swiss people have been supporting China with, and certainly the ventilators for the city of Wuhan, with your team here working very hard to facilitate everything. China and Switzerland have been working together on multiple platforms from the very beginning of the establishment of diplomatic relations. And recently, if we look at the figures, first of all, Switzerland is one of the very first European countries to come onto the platforms of the AIIB, which is a regional platform trying to promote infrastructure building. Switzerland has also been an important contribution to the climate change accord in Paris, which China has also been part of. So, Mr. Ambassador, how do you see this cooperation between China and Switzerland on a multilateral framework and multilateral mechanisms?
Let me start a little bit from the bilateral, from the past.
Okay.
Because it's a very special year, let me say.
70th anniversary.
70th anniversary, so just a few flashes about it. We were among the first countries to recognize the People's Republic of China just 3 months after the establishment. So it was October in January we already made the step. So that's a lot of, it's very meaningful, I find it. Looking back, the world was not today's world with no internet, so we didn't virtually know each other at that time. It was really a very far reality, but nevertheless we made this step. 40 years later, the economic opening of China, and there too I have, now it's 40 years this year, and talking to Swiss companies, I was really amazed to learn in which condition the first joint venture was with a Swiss company. Third piece of history, which is very close, much closer to us, a free trade agreement. We signed in 2013, and this is one of the first definitely with a European country. And there too we went to its very different size, our economies, but nevertheless we felt confident to go into that. The multilateral is a very important aspect. It is your original question. So we don't have the choice but to believe in multilateralism, because as a small country, so we cannot have a unilateral approach, even less a power policy. We have a national defense, of course, but definitely not a policy of power. As a neutral country, we need to have as many relations as possible. I made the example about WHO. And outstanding we will have in the near future, we are already engaged in that, but I am expecting a strong dynamism to be gathered in a few months, is about sustainable development, the Paris Agreement. I think that has been one of the major steps of the international community of success of multilateralism. I had the chance to be present there as a member of the Swiss delegation. I was ambassador in Paris at that time. It has been really a unique moment.
Tell us more, because I'm being very curious about this part of the story. I know before coming here that you were one of the chief negotiators for Switzerland in that.
I was in the delegation. I was the bilateral ambassador.
Well, just to put it humbly, but you know, what was the situation like for you personally at that moment?
So it was not just, you know, a conference where everything has already been discussed, the minister arrived, we sign and we go. So it lasted 12 days or 13
Went beyond the original schedule.
Ahead, no, ahead, it passed, so the watches have been stopped symbolically at a certain point in time. Huge number of delegates, 10,000 delegates. And the outcome was until a couple of days before the end, could be yes or could be fail, or it could fail. I think that the French chair and also the major players, among which China and all the countries, made really a big step to create the positive dynamism, to get into real engagements, 1.5 degree maximum growth of the temperature, and a very bold step. And then at the moment of the adoption, it has been unforgettable. And all negotiators will tell you that. I was listening to the memories of the Chinese negotiator yesterday about that. It has been really a delivery, a very emotional moment. It was a bit like being in a stadium, you know, because it was really a great moment, because we felt that a big step was accomplished. And now, after it has been a difficult 5 years, because major players withdraw from this agreement, some players announced that they are going to join in again. I think that the first months of next year could be the opportunity for a positive development, for major cooperation, a new atmosphere of cooperation, at least in this very important sector, which is environment, climate change, sustainable development. I am expecting a positive momentum in it in a few weeks.
China and Switzerland has become innovation strategic partners over the years. There are a lot of things that the two countries can actually work with one another. How do you see the potential under the current circumstances?
Innovation is definitely an important topic in our bilateral relations. It's important, first of all, for our countries. So I am proud to notice that Switzerland is well off in the international rankings about innovation. What does it mean to have new ideas and to get value out of them? That's innovation, basically, and solutions also for needs. Swiss trade is an important part of our bilateral relation, but one as important as the first one is investment. And what does it mean? Companies, Swiss companies established in China. And it is a huge amount of them and a huge value invested here in China. What do? They are producing innovative solution, because it's not objects, are not tools, are systems which are produced. I visited lately some of the Swiss companies based in China. I was amazed to see how they can provide solutions for, you know, electric cars, or storage of electricity, or as interested as that, smart grid distribution of rational distribution of energy. That showcases well how we can cooperate in innovation. Or at the governmental level, having dialogues, exchanging solutions, for instance, in measurement of pollution, is a very important topic.
Swiss ambassador to China. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow our accounts, Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for watching.